If you watched my Apocalypse Zero video, you may have noticed that I slipped in some hints at the idea that you could read deeper into the political messages that are represented in the show. It was really fascinating seeing the political ideas that people chose to project onto the scenes that I depicted in that video, because they had different interpretations from the ones that I had immediately jumped to. And this is exactly why I tried to be vague about the potential possibilities of how these things could be interpreted. So the biggest one, of course, the one that I kind of leaned into the most, is the big blue baby guy who, he takes his dick, uses it as a microphone, and basically, you know, screams about how his self-expression cannot be infringed upon, and how his self-expression must come at the detriment of other people. His passion is represented in these flowers that eat people. So, my immediate thought when I saw this is, this feels like a metaphor for how the left sees gun owners. That was my first thought. A gun is an instrument that is an impediment to the safety of regular people. At least that's how it's perceived by those who are against guns. Obviously, those who are pro-guns do not see them that way. Particularly the fact that he's wearing like an SS hat. Like, he's kind of he's supposed to be like a fascist character. But his fascism is based in, you know, it's not couched in any kind of attempt to help people at all. He purely is of the mentality that anybody who stands in my way will be executed. He wants rule by might. You know, it's not even like a government. Even anarchy, I think, usually is like, you know, when people talk about anarchy as a political system, they don't mean, you know, rule by might. They mean that nobody has power at all. But this person essentially says, like, I get to do whatever I want, and if you infringe on what I want to do, I will kill you. So you have no power in this relationship. It's all me. I get whatever I want. Fuck you. You know? So it's very extreme, because everything in this OVA is as extreme as possible. But the point of it is to be vague. It's to only present the actual bad part. So, like, for instance, when we are critical of gun owners, the reason we are is not that all gun owners are like this character. It's that the people who are like this character are the reason that it can be a problem to have guns. Ultimately, you know, this person is just basically harboring the mentality of any murderer. You know, anybody who murders as a matter of their identity. But it was fascinating to me that several commenters were like, oh, that's an SJW. That character is an SJW. And I thought, I understand why you would choose to read that, especially if that's the way you see SJWs. But, like, the intent of the work, I am fairly sure is not aimed to insult those who are in favor of social justice, because the main character is literally a social justice warrior. I mean, any superhero essentially is a social justice warrior. It is somebody who is sacrificing their own time and their own effort to purely altruistically help other people who are in need. It's like redistribution of wealth. You know, if the rich were literally just giving all of their money away. If they, for some reason, had an endless wellspring of money and they could do nothing with it but give it away. That is what a superhero does. He does not use his powers for his own benefit. He has an endless wellspring of ability to help those in need, and he solely uses his abilities to help those in need. And in fact, Apocalypse Zero is very heavily critical of not doing that. You know, like, the training undergone by the main character, what makes him the hero, is the fact that he dedicates himself entirely to protecting other people, that he makes no judgment about anyone except, are they a threat to the innocent? And anytime something is a threat to the innocent, he will put a stop to that threat. That is a social justice warrior. So I don't think there's any logic in which we could conclude that this story is anti-social justice. It is definitely pro-social justice. It's just simply an interpretation of what social justice is or means, which of course everybody disagrees on. And the term social justice warrior obviously is used in more specific contexts than anybody championing social justice in any way. Then I got other comments. The other one that was sort of interesting was people who were wondering if this was an anti-trans message in some way. And that one I found particularly strange because there's one character who could be taken as some sort of trans. It's Harada, the older brother, who ends up having a female body, but continuing to identify as male. And I don't think that it says anything about that. Like, there's really nothing in the story that is critical of the fact that Harada is a fusion, like, has taken on a woman's body, you know? Like, we are shown early on that Harada's weakness is this desire to show off. It's not just about protecting the weak, it's about how well you can do it, how flashy you are, how good you are at fighting, you know? That's what Harada cares about inside. And so when she combines with the power of this suit, which has only the desire to protect the innocent, something about the way that it conspires with Harada's mind and mentality causes this disturbance where Harada ends up believing something else. For what it's worth, the father assumes that it was the fault of the female set of armor. He's like, oh, is like what became twisted in this armor's mind, you know, that led to this happening. But, you know, we as viewers have already seen that Harada has the tendencies that could lead to this anyways. So, like, again, there's really no comment in particular on the gender politics of the character. They are the villain entirely because of what their ethics. You know, it has nothing to do with, and it has no commentary on womanhood, and in fact, Harada identifies as a man. You know, like, after having a woman's body, it changes nothing about his self-perception. Lucifer is meant to be hermaphroditic, you know, and in Devilman, Lucifer is a hermaphrodite at the end. And I think that's what they're going for with this character, is to make them hermaphroditic so that they have, you know, the mind of a man and the body of a woman, and it's like, you know, they have a Luciferian mindset. But it has little to say about, like, what it being a man and woman together has to do with anything other than to symbolize Lucifer, you know, which is not inherently a commentary on anything. It can be read a lot of different ways. And again, I think the intention of creating such broad villains who really are only talking about their actual issues, you know, is what allows you to project lots of different things onto this. Now, you could say that there is a strong distaste of sexual deviancy in this OVA. Not only is there a scene where the main character, a woman, tries to come on to him and he slaps her down and tells her, like, we don't do things like that in my house. Like, how dare you be so indecent in my house, you know? So he clearly is not about, you know, like, just random sex, essentially. And a lot of the villains are presented as having some form of sexual deviancy. You know, most of them have some kind of S&M gear on, or again, like the SS fetish hat of the blue guy. You've got, you know, giant dicks, giant tits, just like sexual extremeness exploding out. Now, personally, I did not take this as a critique on sex in and of itself. I took it as more of a critique on basically the Coomer mindset, or the mindset of just being mindlessly self-indulgent. You know, that all of these villains, they have taken their self-indulgence to the absolute extreme. So, you know, you've got Hamuko, the big fat woman who eats men and murders women. And it's like, she's not meant to represent women as a whole. She's meant to represent a type, a pattern of behavior that maybe some women fall into that, you know, that can be destructive towards the people around them. And it's a super extremified take on that. But like the core problem of the character is something that is, you know, that is beyond the fact that she's a woman or the fact that she's a big fat creature. Like, she's representing this emotion that anybody could feel, but, you know, through a caricature of a type of person who might feel those things turned up to 12, you know? So, again, Big Blue Man Baby, like, this kind of fascist tendency to say, my rule is law, and if you don't like it, I'm going to kill you. You know, like anything that interrupts my self-expression is not allowed to live. You know, that's a tendency that could emerge in anybody, but here's a portrait of somebody who looks like your mental image of what that is, you know? Just a big blue man baby in fetish gear, using his cock as a microphone, you know, to truly sing about his own dick. And then you get to the character who's a thought, essentially, and, like, basically she just uses seduction as a way of taking advantage of men to eat them, you know, like, like, Hamuko just takes men and eats them. This girl lures them in and then eats them, or just kills them, just basically for the hell of it. She's just fucking with people, you know? I mean, again, there are people who are going to lure you in with sex and try to destroy you, you know? Like, again, these are super simplified, but, like, it's not as though all women are portrayed this way in this anime. You know, like, the main paragon of empathy is the girl who the main character is falling in love with, Sumiko, who is treated with a ton of respect by the storyline, you know, clearly meant to be considered like a person who is purely good-natured and good of heart. And again, you know, all these characters are super extreme, but it's not as though she's presented as like this traditional housewife girl or something, you know. It's not as though there's like a conservative underlying message of this manga. It basically is just about not letting yourself go, you know, like caring about the people around you and the future of humanity, and, you know, not just being completely self-indulgent, but, you know, harboring some desire to make things better for everybody else is the heroic spirit. And in a world where that is as difficult to do as humanly imaginable, then actually pulling it off requires you to be like the most resolute person you can. And so, like, what ultimately the story of Apocalypse Zero is meant to teach kids is to be resolute. As I said, the title basically, you know, Kakugo's progress or Kakugo's advice would be to be Kakugo, to be resolute, to always stay woke 24/7. You know, like, that's pretty much the message of the show, is stay woke at all times. Because, you know, fear and loathing and all that good shit, basically. But, you know, what you're supposed to stay woke about is intentionally vague and intentionally broad so that you can apply it to as many situations as possible in your personal life. And I think that that's what makes Apocalypse Zero effective to me, is that it successfully is broad enough that you can interpret it different ways and feel as though those interpretations are all valid. At least I do. But let me know what you think. How did you interpret it? You know, did my talking about it change your perception on it? Because, like, again, I was really watching it as like thinking, wow, leftists would love this show. And then the comments were like, leftists would hate this show. And I'm like, we must have fucking watched different shows then. But, you know, let me know what you think.